Hello there, fellow truth seekers. This is Doug coming to you once again on this here Shabbat. Hope all you folks have had a good week and you've been blessed. I want to thank all the new subscribers for joining us here on our study. I'm glad to be able to do this. This is, something I look forward to every week. And I think, the people that leave comments, good or bad, I like, to hear what people have to say. And, I was thinking about the stuff that's been going on here recently. Of course, I'm sure everybody's aware about the attempted assassination of former President Trump. And when you see all the, I got a fly now that's going to be aggravating me. I've been trying to get him, but he's pretty quick. It's there's a lot of things around it that are kind of questionable. Was it staged? Was it actually, an attempt on his life? And when you look at the video footage of stuff, people trying to tell the police, that they spotted this guy over there, and now they're saying there was two, one up on a water tower, and that some of these people that were supposed to be Secret Service were actually FBI. And of course, when you look back on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, it was an inside job. I mean, probably the CIA. Because if you look, I think George Bush was riding in the front seat of the limo that Kennedy was riding in. And after the fact, after all this happened, he became the head of the CIA. Just saying, well, and you look at how inept all these people were, was it a setup? But then you have the Republican National Convention there, and what do? The first thing, they have this woman come out, this Hindu woman, and she says some kind of a prayer to her god Brahma, and calls it the one true God. That just goes to show you. Now, I didn't watch the whole thing or anything, just clips here and there. But my understanding is that they had prayers from other people, other beliefs or whatever, I guess, which ought to tell you something about what I've been talking about this inclusive religion. How it's being made more palatable, more acceptable, more mainstream all the time. And then when you look at the person that that Trump chose for his running mate, he's a Catholic. He's married to a Indian woman, which is, that in itself is not necessarily anything wrong with that. But is she Hindu? Is she Catholic? Or and he's supposedly, a diehard kind of Catholic. And I've talked about Trump's affiliation with the Pope. I just think that, he's highly involved with these ecumenicals. So I'd say, like I've said before, I'd take him with a grain of salt. I believe that that it's what I've talked about before, the controlled oppositions, the Hegelian dialectic, to create problems, watch the reaction, offer solutions. That's what this is all about. Is they're creating all this chaos and all to watch what people's reactions are going to be, and then they're going to offer a solution. And of course, it's going to be presented as, a savior, someone that can, make all this bad stuff go away. And but I think that they will use it as a way also to introduce totalitarian measures. Oh, it's just, the only way we can deal with this is we got to do this. We got to put boots on the ground. We got to, and there's so much corruption and so much black market stuff going on, and so much fraud with credit card fraud and bank fraud and all of this kind of stuff. And the internet, is like yesterday, they had this big crash that shut down all the airlines. Some kind of what is it, that cloud strike or whatever it is, that I guess is sort of a clandestine group that tries to shut stuff down, just to show that it can be done. And I don't know. I haven't done a whole lot of deep dive into it or anything like that, but I'm just looking at some of the headlines and the clips here and there. And that's why I kind of want to talk about what I'm going to talk about today, because that stuff is all meant to distract us away from the truth of this. And why it's so important to know this, because I see, when you look at this here, I've talked about this too in recent videos about this Earth Sabbath or whatever. They're talking about making Sunday the official Sabbath, the official day of rest, and making it law. And of course, the last time that really happened was during the time of Constantine, when they made it law. The secular law enforced religious law. And they created laws to enforce the religious doctrine or whatever. And these people that are running for election here seem to be on board with this. And of course, this is where the conflict is going to come in. And I've talked about that too, as to what the seal of Elohim is on his people and what the mark of the beast is. It's going to be tied in with chipping and all that stuff. But the true mark of the beast is the day of worship that you worship on. That's going to be his mark on you. And where it talks about where he seals his people, that seal, and it goes back into into the Old Testament there, where I think it's in Leviticus, where it says that the Sabbath is a sign and a seal upon those who are his. And so that is going to be the dichotomy, the draw, where the line is going to be drawn, and you're going to have to make a choice about who you're going to serve, and that's going to be what is going to be the distinction between the ones who follow after the Antichrist and really Satan, or Hasatan, the adversary, and who follow Elohim. And so I was looking at it here today. I prayed about it, what I ought to talk about, and I thought that really the focus, because people are so what they're playing on a lot of this is materialism. You know, make America great again. You know, rich again. Strong again. You know, all of these things that are materialistic. And so, I thought I would read a couple of parables of Christ, because again, he is our teacher and our example of how to live. I hold great high esteem of Peter and Paul and the other apostles, but ultimately, the one that we are to get our guidance and our teaching and on how to live and on how to gain life is through the Messiah. Not, they were just to go out and proclaim what he had said. That's all. And so, this is the parable of the rich fool and the unfaithful servant, and whenever Christ had been contending with the scribes and the Pharisees about casting demons out and stuff, and afterwards, he talked about that. But then after this, this is in Luke chapter 12, I believe. Yep, Luke chapter 12. And one of the company said unto him, Master, speak to my brother that he divide the inheritance with me. And he said unto him, Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you? And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. And he said, This will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods, and laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But Elohim said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich towards Elohim. And he said unto the disciples, Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what you shall eat, neither for the body what you shall put on. The life is more than meat, and the body is more than raiment. Consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap, which neither hath storehouse nor barn, and Elohim feedeth them. How much more are ye better than fowls? That's the thing that they're going to play on, that this system is going to play on, is, the raiment and the food, and, they're going to use that. They're going to use that against you. That's why he's trying to emphasize this, to not let that be your focus. Because if you do, you're going to fall right into it. You're going to be drawn right into it. You're going to end up worshiping this Antichrist, this, Satan, because he comes up and indwells this man. But that's exactly what's going to happen. And, by the way, and I've spoken about this before too, about the raising of Osiris, which is a ritual that they do every time there is a new president. And they're hoping it'll stick at some point. And of course, Osiris is Baal, Nimrod, all these, Apollo. And where does it say that he's going to come from? From down in the bottomless pit. This spirit. that's going to come up out of the bottomless pit, the ruler over the bottomless pit, the angel of the bottomless pit. And in the Greek it's Apollyon, and in the Hebrew it's Abaddon. Well, Apollyon, Apollo, same entity. Baal. You name them. They go by many different names. Out of many, one. That's where that comes from. But but they tell you it's the melting pot here in America. Oh yeah, we're made up of many different people. Yeah, we are, but that ain't what the Freemasons is talking about, because that's who made the dollar bill and put all of those Freemason symbols all over it, and all of those Latin phrases, e pluribus unum and novo ordero seclorum and all that kind of stuff. New order of the ages, out of many one. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about this God, this false God, out of many, many different names by different people. Brahma, the Hindu, Osiris, Nimrod, Baal, you name it, but they're talking about the same entity. And so that's going to be their focus. That's what they're going to, because where it talks about that, except you receive this mark, you are not going to be able to buy or sell. And that's why Christ is emphasizing this here, is because he wants you to realize that it doesn't matter what these people do. Look at what happened with this rich man here. He had all the food, and everything that he could ever need. And yet his soul was required of him. And he died. And whose was it after that? And so we don't need to focus on that. Just like here he's telling you, don't focus on the raiment. Don't focus on food. Elohim takes care of those who put him first. It says, consider the ravens, for they neither sow nor reap, which neither have storehouse nor barn, and Elohim feedeth them. How much more are ye better than fowls? And which of you, which taketh thought, can add to his stature 1 cubit? That's about 18 inches. Who can do that? Nobody. If ye then be not able to do that thing which is least, why take you thought for the rest? Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, they spin not. And yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then Elohim so clothes the grass which is today in the field and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O ye of little faith? And seek not ye that ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, neither be ye of doubtful mind. For all these things do the nations of the world seek after. And that's what I'm saying. The world seeks after that stuff. That's why they're going to be caught up in this, and they're going to be drawn right into it, because they think that the state, that this Antichrist, that this global entity, this global world government is the only way that they can survive. They got to have them to eat, to have clothes, or whatever, for their material things. It says, for all these things do the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. But rather seek ye the kingdom of Elohim, and all these things will be added unto you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, neither moth corrupteth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So that's what we need to be focusing on, is laying up our treasures in heaven. Fruit that don't corrupt, that don't rust, that don't, get eaten by moths. And if you focus on that, where your treasure, where your heart is where your treasure is. And so, we need to focus on laying up our treasures in the Shamayim. Not here on the earth where rust and moth corrupt and thieves seek to break in and steal. And where they intend on using it as a way to enslave you. It says, let your loins be girded about and your lights burning. And ye yourselves liken to men that wait for their Lord, when he will return from the wedding, that when he cometh and knocketh, they may open unto him immediately. Be waiting and expecting so that you're immediately ready, that you don't have to run into the house and gather your garments. Blessed are those servants whom the Lord, when he cometh, shall find watching. Verily I say unto you, that he shall gird himself and make them to sit down to meat, and will come forth and serve them. And if he shall come in the second watch, or come in the third watch, and find them so, blessed are those servants. And this know, that if the good man of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not have suffered his house to be broken through. Be ye therefore ready also, for the Son of Man cometh at an hour when ye think not. And so, we need to be watching and waiting. And right now, when you look around at the world and all the things that are going on in the world right now, if you're a true believer and you believe what this word says, then you know that we're near the end. And I believe probably closer than people really think. I hear, some of these people that I believe are, they're sincere, but I believe in some things they're sincerely wrong, and that is that it's way, on out, 50 years or, something like that. And I just don't believe it. I think that everything is coming together. Like I've said before about the kings of the East, how they're all aligning themselves, with this and this BRICS and the kind of stuff that's going on in the West, the shakeup that's going on right now in Europe and here in the United States, and all the intrigue. Somebody was saying that it was like Game of Thrones or something. And then look at Biden. They're trying to shove him out, and bring in Kamala or whatever. And they're having their own internal civil war. It is like Game of Thrones or something, or like it was in Roman times or in the medieval times. These palace intrigue, assassinations and betrayal and all that kind of stuff. Just going on left and right, and deception, deceiving, being deceived. Christ talked about that in Matthew 24, the people were deceiving and being deceived. And of course that's what we see going on now. And so the best thing that as true believers that we can do is to take our focus off of that, off of the things of the world, off all this intrigue and all that stuff. I mean, it's not to say not to be aware of it. We need to be aware of what's going on around us. But because, there is going to come a time when, like he told the disciples about the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. When you see these things, these armies encamped about, flee to the mountains, flee to the hills, get out. And of course, the true believers, they did, and they survived. But there was over 1 million Jews that were killed during that siege of Jerusalem. And it's going to happen again. The same scenario is going to happen again, and the true believers they're going to have to flee. Whenever you see these armies encamped about, and of course that's coming. I mean, we know they call it the Battle of Armageddon, but it's not the Battle of Armageddon. Armageddon is a gathering place where these armies are going to gather. The true battle is the Battle of Jerusalem, the holy city, man. That's the focus here. Because that's the place where Elohim chose to put his name. That's where he chose to place his name. He could have put it anywhere. I mean, the earth is his. The earth is his. He can do what he wants. But he chose that place to put it. And that's where the Messiah is going to return to, and that's where he's going to rule from. And so, rule his kingdom, the actual physical kingdom. So we need to be thinking about that, being a part of that kingdom, because it's coming whether we want it to or not. And he's going to put down all of these powers and these, around the world, and they're going to know who the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords is, the Ancient of Days. And so as we see this time drawing ever closer, approaching, we need to think about that there where, we're prepared for whenever he comes. Because we don't know. We can't put a day on it or anything like that. But we can know by the signs. It's just like back there in the last part of that chapter there, he talks about, and over here, he talks about the them knowing the signs of the weather and all that kind of stuff, but they don't know, the sign of the coming of his kingdom. And of course, this next parable, or he's basically it says, then Peter said, and this is verse 41, then Peter said unto him, Lord, speakest thou this parable unto us, or even to all? And Yahushua said, who then is that faithful and wise steward whom his Lord shall make ruler over his household, to give them their portion of meat in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Of a truth I say unto you, that he will make him ruler over all that he hath. But, and if that servant say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to beat the men servants and maidens, and to eat and drink, and to be drunken, the Lord or master of that servant will come in a day when he looketh not for him, and at an hour when he is not aware, and will cut him in sunder, and will appoint him his portion with the unbelievers. And that servant which knew his Lord's will, and prepared not himself, neither did according to his will, shall be beaten with many stripes. But that he that knew not, and did commit things worthy of stripes, shall be beaten with few stripes. For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required. And to whom men have committed much, of him they will ask the more. I am come to send fire on the earth, and what will I, if it be already kindled? But I have a baptism to be baptized with, and how am I straitened till it be accomplished? Suppose ye that I am come to give peace on earth, I tell ye, nay, but rather division. For from henceforth there shall be 5 in one house, divided 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. The father shall be divided against the son, and the son against the father, the mother against the daughter, and the daughter against the mother, and the mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And he said also to the people, when you see a cloud rise out of the west, straightway ye say, there cometh a shower, and so it is. And when you see the south wind blow, ye say, there will be heat, and it cometh to pass. Ye hypocrites, ye can discern the face of the sky and of the earth, but how is it that ye do not discern this time? Yea, and why even of yourselves judge ye not what is right? When thou goest with thine adversary to the magistrate, as thou art in the way, give diligence that thou mayest be delivered from him, lest he hail thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and the officer cast thee into prison. I tell thee, thou shalt not depart thence till thou hast paid the very last mite. And of course, it's talking about here, these hypocrites, that if they think they're going to escape the judge, they're mistaken. These people, they can discern, the weather, they can discern the things that are going on the earth, but they can't discern what is right. They can't discern what's right. That's where he's saying here. Yes, yea, and why even of yourselves judge ye not what is right? And when you look around, and it's not that people don't know, because he said he would write his laws in our hearts and in our minds. And that's not just believers, that's all people. That's why a lot of them going to be without excuse. Because even, I think I'd done a study one time where I talked about these people that they discovered down there in the jungles down in South America. Some missionary or something, found out about them, and he contacted one of these Bible universities or whatever that, one of the bigger ones that had scientists and stuff that were, anthropologists and linguists and all that kind of stuff working with them. And so not only were these so-called Christian scientists called to come down there, but there was also secular scientists that went down there, because it was, the anthropologists and the paleontologists and all these people that study human origin and study people groups and all that kind of stuff. They wanted to go down there and talk to these people and learn about them, because today that's becoming rarer and rarer to find groups of people that basically are unknown by the rest of the world. So they go down there and they began, and the people spoke a dialect of whatever the native language was around there, Mayan or Incan or something. And they had people that could speak the language, and they began talking to them, and they were observing stuff about them. They were there where their their camp was, or where their homes were at and stuff. And they noticed that there was no statues or totems or any kind of religious symbols. And so they began to talk to them about God. They said, well, do you folks not worship a God or have a God or anything like that? And they said, what's God? We don't worship anything. We don't know nothing about that kind of stuff. And so some of these scientists said, well, we need to kind of question them to kind of see, what their beliefs are about certain things, as far as like murder and stealing and all that. Well, they did. They asked them, how do you feel about killing? They said, well, no, it's wrong, and we have a punishment for that. They had, I guess, capital punishment. If you killed somebody, you died. If it was murder, if it was accidental, it flies back. But they also had asked them about stealing, and they said it was wrong, or coveting other people's stuff. It was wrong. And they had a marriage ceremony. They believed that it was, if you were married and you went and laid with somebody else's husband or wife, it was wrong, and I think they had some kind of punishment for that too. And so they basically, these people understood these things to be wrong, and they knew what the right was and they knew what the wrong was, but yet they had no religion. They had been no outside influences like from the Catholics or anything like that, or from Protestants, missionaries and stuff. They'd never met any, because these people were highly isolated. And so, the point is that these people knew within themselves what was right and wrong without anybody having told them. So it verifies what the Father said he would do. He would place his laws in their hearts and in their minds. And basically the laws that they had was the laws as it relates to other people, because they didn't know about any other god, any gods or any of that. So the first 4 of the commandments, they really didn't know about that. But the way that they interacted with other people, which is the last 6 of the commandments, is our relationship to one another. And so, but they understood those, about honoring your mother and father, not murdering, not stealing, not lying, not committing adultery, not, coveting other people's things. They understood that. And that's what it's talking about here. It says, yea, and why even of yourselves judge ye not what is right? Talking about, without having a religious influence, why don't, why even of yourselves judge ye not what is right? These people are not judging what is right. And of course, when thou goest with thine adversary to the magistrate, as thou art in the way, give diligence that thou mayest be delivered from him, lest he hale thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and the officer to the cast thee in prison. And because he's speaking to these hypocrites, that they can discern all these things, but then why can they not judge what's right? And so that's the other aspect of our waiting for our Messiah to come, is judging what is right, doing what is right. And in the face of the way the world is, it's getting more and more about everybody doing what's right in their own eyes, like they're in the last book of Judges. Everybody, there was no king in the land in those days, and every man done that which was right in his own eyes. And so that's what we're seeing today, and people calling good evil and evil good. I mean the transgender, homosexuality, abortion, and a whole host of other things. I mean, look at all the people that came out on social media, influential people, Hollywood, actors and people like that, musicians and all that kind of stuff that come out saying stuff about Trump being shot at. Oh, well, next time they need to get a better scope. I mean, even if you don't agree with Trump or don't care, have no use for him or whatever, civilized people and people, they don't talk like that. I mean, even if you don't believe in anything. I mean, that's, and that's the kind of stuff that, causes this, is that kind of talk. Is it influences or, causes people to get it in their head to go do something like that. Of course, I personally think that, like that guy that they've been bringing up as the so-called shooter, that young boy, I just think he was the scapegoat. That he was just there, probably MK Ultra, probably didn't even realize he was there. He was just being used as the scapegoat. And that the real shooter was probably, like they're saying, up on that water tower, and it was just a fluke. Well, some people were saying it was a miracle. You see how, and that's the thing too there, where it talks about the Antichrist and all that stuff doing, and these miracles, and the false prophet doing these miracles and signs and lying wonders. Miracles are not always, lightning coming down out of the sky or something like that. No. They can be things like that, where, just this last second, he turned his head and, if he'd have kept his head like that right there, he'd caught one in the forehead or something, but he turned his head, and when he did, and they're calling it a miracle. So you can have stuff like that too. Or you can have, for example, if this certain person gets elected and does all the stuff that he's saying. I mean, talking about doing away with income tax, doing away with the tax on tips, energy independence, bringing manufacturing back, and putting tariffs, to replace the income tax, putting tariffs on all imported items. Which would, in effect, encourage manufacturing here, and closing up the border. Well, if but you got these people on the other side saying it's never going to happen. The manufacturers, people like Barack Obama, manufacturing's never coming back here, and others, and the border, that's the globalist thing, and all that. And so if you have all these talking heads, these so-called experts and people saying, oh, this stuff's, can never happen, but then what if it does? What if he does initially begin, wouldn't those things be considered miracles? I mean, turn around the United States from the decline and the collapse that's happening right in front of our face. And I mean, wouldn't that also, because it says, when they say, and everybody, talks about how he's, this peacemaker, the Abraham Accords, and how he went over there and met with, Vladimir Putin. He met with Xi, the North Korean, Kim Jong-un. I mean, he's met with all these people, and while he was president, there was no conflicts abroad. We had, peace abroad and prosperity at home. I'm just saying, you know, um, and I brought out a couple other things, you know, about his lineage and his connections to people and things. I mean that you know people need to look into and think about because. And I hear over and over again these comments. Oh, you know, only Trump can save America. You know, people talk about making him a king, and you know, doing away with elections. You know, and just making him a king and a ruler over us or whatever. You know, and of course it's rhetoric, but you know, a lot of these people probably really truly believe that. You know that he's our savior. He's America's savior. And I would think about that. But what I just read here about, you know, laying up your treasures in heaven, not being caught up with what you wear or what you're going to eat or what you'll drink. Because our Father, He knows what we need. And what we need more than that is we need spiritual food. We need spiritual understanding, discernment, to be able to see beyond the deceptions. Because these deceptions are going to get more intense, and they're going to be, things are going to be to where you cannot tell. Especially with this AI and stuff that they're you know, and as I've said before, I believe that the AI, they're developing all the AI, and whenever they come up with one that's going to be like the boss AI, it's going to take over all the other AIs. It's going to, you know, the one that's smart enough, powerful enough, that can take over the other ones will be the one that dominates and will be the one that they will be using to enforce all this stuff. It's not this you know, they're going to be worshiping AI or nothing. No, they're going to be worshiping the image of the beast, the person. Of course, the beast is a system, but it's going to have a head, you know, over it. And of course, this is the one that they're going to, you know, and because he does all these things, you know, he'll bring peace and, you know, prosperity. And I mean, it's not just people here in America that's calling for him, you know, that he can do it. I mean, it's people all over the world that are, you know, rooting him on, you know, and I mean, you know, in England and Europe and in Japan and the Philippines and even in China and places like that. There's people that, you know, think that he's the only way that the world can avoid World War III. So, I mean, you know, I'm just bringing that up just for something for you to think about. But the truth of the matter is, be ye therefore ready also, for the Son of Man cometh at an hour which ye think not. And don't, you know, think that, well, you know, where is the you know, coming of the Messiah? Things remain as they were, you know, since the beginning, before our father slept. Don't get to thinking like that, because they're not the way they were. I mean, things have, you know, I mean, the nature of human beings is not changed. We still just, you know, as ornery and wicked as we've ever been, but there's a lot more people, and there's a lot more, you know, weaponry, you know, weapons of mass destruction and stuff, and of course, excuse me, Messiah said, except in Matthew 24, he said, except the days be short and no flesh be spared. Because what will happen is that, it will get, because whenever this entity, this person, begins to demand worship and stuff, well, there's a lot of people in the world that ain't going to want to go along with that. And not only that, the mark of the beast and all that stuff, there's a lot of people that ain't going to go along with it. I mean, there's going to be, and I think that's one of the things that's going to lead to the big confrontation, is that, there will be a lot that will, because they're going to be mesmerized. They're going to be deceived. But there's still going to be those, and I mean, I'm not talking about Christians. I mean, just regular people that maybe don't believe in anything, maybe atheists, or they may believe in something else, but they're not going to want to go along with it. And so you're going to end up, with this big conflict. And of course, it's going to center around Israel, because their ultimate objective is going to be to destroy the true Jewish people, the ones that are still around. And the house of Israel, those people, they're not going to escape it either. They're going to be, because he says in the last days that he will gather them, not the Zionists, the Rothschilds and that bunch. But they have went over there and established it, and they're calling themselves Jews, even though they're Ashkenazis and stuff. And there's even another group that calls themselves Jews. But they went and done this so that they could draw the remaining true Jews over there, get them over there so that they know where they're at, so that they can bring destruction on them, because Christ says, "I will not return until they say," talking about the Jews. It ain't talking about the house of Israel. It's talking about the Jews. Until they say, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Okay, so their idea is to destroy the true Jewish people, so that they cannot say that, because when they get their back against the wall, then they will call on the Messiah, and of course he'll return, but not before then. And so the house of Israel, that's a whole nother group there. I mean, it talks about them being rejoined, the two sticks being brought back together and bundled up and never be separated again. But it's Elohim that does it, not men. So, but I'm pretty sure, I believe that's, as far as the reason why the Zionists and all were intent on reestablishing the nation of Israel over there, was to deceive the true Jews into coming back over there so that they could destroy them. And I think that's, the idea is so that they cannot call on Yahushua. Deception, more and more, I mean, everywhere. And, I've got to the point where I just, I don't think about all that kind of stuff. I mean, I have to eat, like anybody else. I'm flesh. But it's not something I walk around all day thinking, well, man, it's time to eat. I'm going to go, no, I don't think about it. I don't think, I mean, if you look at what I'm wearing, I mean, I don't really think too much about clothes either. There was a time in my life when that was my focus, on material things. I mean, worked to have all that stuff, but I try to think about, the spiritual treasures, and to focus on that. And of course, I'm like anybody else. Like I say, I'm a human, and of course I can get distracted if I'm not careful. I mean, we have to stay focused to keep from being distracted by all the noise and all the things that are going on around us, because that's what they're intended to do. You know, Satan wants to keep us distracted for, you know, two reasons. One is so we don't focus on our Creator, on our Elohim, and the other is so that we don't see what they're doing. So that we don't see what these political pawns of the principalities are doing. They're making these laws. They're appointing this person and appointing that person, putting them in positions of power. They're doing all this kind of stuff behind the scenes, and we would, the masses would pick up on it if they wasn't distracted. So they keep you distracted with sports, with entertainment, with a job, with religion, with hobbies, with everything, anything and everything that they can, the political systems, to make you think you have a choice. When they're not elected, they're selected, and they just make you think you have a choice. And why do you think there's only really two parties? Again, the Hegelian dialectic. Controlled opposition. You got to have some kind of opposition to keep you focused on these two groups, and they're the left-hand path and the right-hand path. It doesn't matter which one. They both lead to the same place. It's just a matter of how you get there. And so it doesn't matter which one you wind up with. You're going to wind up at the same end point no matter what. Because the people up here, the principalities, they're the ones that are planning and implementing all this stuff. And of course they can only do what the Father allows. They're whatever actions they take, it's going to follow His plan. And if they try to do something to thwart it or to move the goalpost away from where He wants them, He will intervene, and push the goalpost back where it's supposed to be. And that's the way it is. And the idea of it, I think, behind it is to try to wake mankind up to the fact that we are incapable of ruling over ourselves rightly. Well, we can rule over ourselves, but not rightly. And we always, end up with a tyrant or just lawless, immoral or whatever people ruling over us. And and deceivers. They get up there and they just put out whatever they're told to put out. I'm talking about from the president down. It doesn't matter. Their agenda is governed by these powers that are up above. And of course, I think that the human hybrid rulers of this world are up at the banking cartel, because I think it was what was his name? He was a Rothschild, and it was back in the early 1800s or somewhere. But he said, "I care not who runs the government, so long as I control the money." Because whoever controls the money controls the people and the governments. They control, whoever can control all the money controls it all. Because over and again, when you look at the final beast system that is, controls everything to the point where they can, got the technology and the ability to put these chips into people that will control, and I believe that it's more than that it's the transhumanist stuff. the transhumanism, which is to change people from being humans to where you're really no longer a human anymore. And they're gonna get people to do it because they're gonna promise them, extended life or whatever. Immortality. And it goes back to there in Genesis. I mean, what did, in Genesis, the last part of Genesis 2 and chapter 3, the first part of chapter 3, what did the serpent, the Nahash, what did he promise Eve? You will not die. You'll become as God. You'll be a God. And this is the same thing that they're telling people now. What they're promising them with this stuff, this transhumanism and all. Oh, you'll be like a God, man. You'll be able to extend. You may be able to live to be 500 years old, and you'll have access to vast databases of knowledge that a normal human could never have access to. I mean, just sitting here on a computer screen or a computer looking up information or whatever, or going to a library and reading books, you could never absorb all of this stuff. But if you have this interface, that you're interfaced with the AI system, you can have access to, be superhuman. And so, it stands to reason that that would be an enticement to a lot of people to do this. The promise of extended life and extreme intelligence or extreme ability to gather knowledge and other physical attributes, strength and speed and agility and all that kind of stuff that could be genetically engineered into somebody. And which is the same thing, as I've said before, I think was going on before the flood. That's what they were doing. They were, the same promises to say, because that's what they were what the Hosh told them. And then in Genesis 6, they come down here and started delivering. They started coming down here, giving them that knowledge and but they duped them in the sense that they come down here and they began to procreate and have their own offspring that they put in authority over people and stuff like that as surrogates. And it's the same as this Antichrist. And Antichrist is not necessarily like in opposition to, it means in place of or instead of. Instead of, it's a false Christ, a false Messiah. That is what it's going to be, but and that's exactly what they were doing back then. They put somebody there in place of Yahuwah and of their own, and so that's. And you've had this over and over again throughout time, these people coming up that were possessed or whatever by this spirit of Antichrist that keeps popping up and taking over people like Nero or Nimrod, or it's the same thing. And they want, ultimately they want to be worshipped because the spirit of this entity indwells them. And it's this spirit that wants to worship. And it's the same that's going to take place with this Antichrist, this lawless one, this man of perdition, whatever you want to call him, that he's going to want, and it's this entity that indwells him that is the one that really wants to worship Satan, the Hasatan, the Satan, the main one that wants this worship. And so we need to be able to recognize it. And if we got our minds focused on storing our treasures up in heaven and not being covetous and stuff, because that kind of stuff blinds you. It blinds you to what's going on. To be able to see the truth, if you're blinded with covetousness, with lust, with the things of the world, the material things of the world, then you can't see the real reality, the truth of what's going on around you. You're not going to be able to see it. And that's why so many people, it says, are going to be deceived, because their minds are blinded by the things of the world, the cares of the world. And we need to not do that. We need to keep our mind focused on our Hamashiach, or Elohim, and the things of his kingdom. And not be like these hypocrites over here that can't judge what's right. We need to be able to judge what is right and to do what's right. Not to just judge what's right, but to do what's right. Because he's written his laws in our hearts and in our minds. And so we're going to be without excuse. And so I think I'm going to leave it there. And that's most of Luke chapter 12, starting at verse 13 and going to verse 59. If you want to go and read those. I think that Christ was telling them that, and it, of course, it applies to us even more so today, as the time is drawing near, to take our focus off of those things, the material things, the physical things, and put it onto the spiritual, and not be caught up in this spiritualism and stuff that's going on. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that. Listening to what the Word has to say. And focusing on the Messiah and what he said. Because he's the way. He's the way, the truth, and the life. And no man can come unto the Father but by him. He is our Cohen Hagadol, our high priest. So just like with the high priest, Aaron and all, whenever he went in there, only he alone could go into the Holy of Holies and intercede for the people. Well, Christ is sitting at the right hand in the light. I talked about that last week. Only he alone has immortality. Only he alone. The only human to have immortality. And so he alone is sitting there at the right hand in the light. And he intercedes for us. He's our intercessor, our Kohen Hagadol, our high priest. And so when we seek these things, then the Father hears it. And he will give those things to us. He'll give us the things that we need. He will provide for us. He will take care of us. And we don't need to be taking thought for those things. What we need to be taking thought for is trying to win people over, convert people with the truth. Help them to see the truth. And the only way you can do that is by giving them the Word. Because that's the only way they can ever have belief. Because, the Scripture says, faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of Elohim. And that faith or belief can only happen if people hear it. So that's the things we need to be focusing on, and we need to be focusing like there, verse 57, judge what is right and do what is right. And so with that, I thank you folks for watching the videos. I hope that you get something from it. I hope it gets you to thinking. I hope it gets you to wanting to study the scriptures, to seek for yourself whether these things are so or not. You know, be good Bereans. Remember that, 2 Timothy 2:15. To study, to make thyself approved a workman unto Elohim, who need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And that can only happen is if you study it, if you get in it, and you read it, and you pray about it, and ask for wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and discernment. And if you seek these things truly with your heart, then he'll give it to you. He's not going to withhold any good thing from you. And those are all good things to want. Because knowledge without wisdom is worthless. You have to have the wisdom to be able to apply the knowledge that you have. And so that's why I tell you to study. And the more you study, the more that his truth will come out. It'll be revealed to you. Especially if you're seeking it with your heart. And, as we like to say, when we're coming to the, closer to the end of things, it's more important than ever. Because that's how we'll keep from being deceived. There in Matthew 24, Christ said that, that Hasatan would deceive even the very elect if it were possible. Well, why is it not possible? Because we have this, and we have the Ruach HaKodesh to lead us to the truth. But he expects us to do our part. And that part is, one, believe, study his word, and to apply it. Don't, be not just hearers of the word, but doers. Doers of the word. And so, with that, I'm going to call it a day. I love you folks. I hope that you will be blessed. I pray for you. I hope you'll pray for me, because I've talked about being spiritually under attack, and I need your prayers too. And we need to all pray for each other. That's one of the things that we can do for each other, even though we're separated by distance. We're not separated in spirit. And so we need to be one in the body of Christ, praying for each other and uplifting each other. And so with that, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'll see you again on the next Shabbat if Yahuwah is willing.